What's up, and welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Tuesday, April 23rd. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White and Chris Towers. Today on the show, we had some interesting pitcher performances, hitters who are off to slow starts. The Orioles are promoting Heston Kjerstad, and much more. But let's jump in.
Oh my goodness gracious!
Oh my goodness gracious. Scott, you were up with the player of the night.
All right. Well, there were two performances by pitchers who used to be good, have not looked good this year, but looked amazing today against really bad lineups. And one of those pitchers I will be taking is Chris Paddack, who against the White Sox, now with Eloy Jimenez again, but still no Luis Robert, and still very bad. 7 shutout innings, 10 strikeouts, no walks. Amazing start for Chris Paddack. He entered this game with an 8.36 ERA, 2.07 WHIP, 5.8 K per 9. And you look at the breakdown of, the pitches he threw, the velocities, etc. It looks like he was doing the same stuff he'd always been doing. Why it worked so much better, I suspect the opponent had the most to do with that. And I'm generally not a the opponent matters more than the pitcher sort of person. I know a lot of people approach weekly starts and sits that way. The opponent is the only thing that matters. I think the opponent is secondary to the actual pitcher you're starting. So I wouldn't have imagined starting Chris Paddack. I had him, I think, at the no thanks section of the 2-start pitchers list. But I don't know. That's like been a long-standing principle of mine, and I just wonder if these White Sox and Athletics lineups are that much worse than we've come across before. Probably not. Probably it's usually a good idea to bet against the extreme outlier.
But man, you look through the names. Outside of Eloy, is there a single player on the White Sox that would start on half of the other teams in baseball right now?
I don't
think Andrew Vaughn would, given...
I don't think so either, given that he's a first baseman.
And that's the only potential one. I mean, Robbie Grossman was a spring invite in a minor league edition, I think. Gavin Sheets is a platoon bat. Like, this offense is dreadful.
It is. But usually when, it's not the first time we've seen a lineup full of AAA players, and usually what happens is eventually a couple of those AAA guys emerge as more than that. It hasn't happened yet, obviously. It's still April. So I don't know. I don't know that I want to abandon my whole approach to how I select pitchers to start and sit. Obviously, I factor in the opponent, but again, it's secondary to how good the pitcher I think himself is. I don't think Chris Paddack is very good, but he sure looked like it against this White Sox lineup today.
Yeah, I would agree with that. He still gave up some hard contact in this start. What I noticed with the pitch mix, he threw a few more fastballs and changeups, but entering the start, his fastball had a 444 expected WOBA. His changeup had a 494 expected WOBA. Those are really, really bad marks for individual pitches. Maybe he can kind of work his way into streamer territory, because even though he's got a 5.57 ERA, it's a 3.94 xFIP. So, if he gets to that point where he's pitching, to like a high 3s or a low 4s kind of expectation, then again, he could kind of work his way into streaming territory. But for now, 36% rostered, this doesn't matter, right? Scott, we're not looking to add Paddack after.
It's going to take a whole lot more than this.
Right.
Look, he used to be good, and he's newly returned from Tommy John surgery. So it's not the craziest idea to think Paddack could become a viable fantasy option again. Certainly he was being drafted like it, but I'm not looking at this start against the White Sox and believing at this moment, yes, this is the return to form for Chris Paddack.
The one thing I would say is just he's RP eligible. And we've lost Cody Bradford. We've lost Frankie Montas.
We've gained Rafael Soriano, baby.
I mean, yeah,
no, not Rafael Soriano, Jose Soriano.
Yeah. So it's possible that there are some head-to-head points leagues where he's not rostered, where I think you can make the case for it. But outside of that, yeah, I don't. I actually did start Paddack in 2 leagues. One because I lost Montas in a head-to-head points league. The other was an AL only league, and my other option I think was
You're a genius,
Irvin or something.
Just say it, you're a genius.
Yeah, I'm the smartest boy in America. But yeah, it was. I think the biggest thing is it's nice to see signs of life from a guy who once was a must-start pitcher, and if he can go out and give us more signs of life the next time he pitches, that'd be great. But no, I don't think it's moving the needle either way.
Last point on Paddack, his first 3 starts were against the Brewers, the Dodgers, the Orioles. Pretty tough matchups. Say what you will about the Brewers, but they actually have been great against right-handed pitching this season. So we'll see where Paddack goes from here, but no immediate action necessary in fantasy. Chris, over to you, player of the day.
Yeah, the other guy that Scott was referring to, I think, in his intro to the Chris Paddack discussion was Carlos Rodon, who took advantage of a very bad Oakland Athletics lineup. And I think now is the time to try to trade Carlos Rodon. Now, I wrote an article saying that 2 weeks ago as well. So I suppose you could say that it has been and remains the time to trade Carlos Rodon, because I don't buy what he's doing right now. He's got the ERA back under 3. I think it's 2.70 for the season. The expected ERA much higher than that, about a run and a half higher. And I just don't really see anything that he's doing particularly well right now. He walked 2, struck out 4 over 7 innings, no runs allowed, 1 hit. His velocity was down about 1.5 miles per hour in this one, but I will say that seemed intentional. That seemed by design, because it was down a lot more early in the start, and then he ran into a little bit of trouble, reached back for 96, 97 with runners on base a few times. 6th and 7th innings, the fastball actually looked better than it has, I think, maybe all season, the way he was locating it, the way he was spinning it. But
his best 2 starts, Rodon's best 2 starts this year, have been his lowest velocity starts. They've also been his starts against the Marlins and the Athletics.
Yeah.
So.
And I think the biggest thing here is just that he still doesn't have his slider. And I just don't believe that Carlos Rodon can be a good pitcher at 94 miles per hour, especially without his slider. He threw it 13 times today. He got 1 whiff on 7 swings. That's a dreadful, dreadful result. And, okay, the quality of contact was really poor against it, 84 miles per hour, but against the A's. So you would expect the quality of contact to be pretty poor, even if the pitcher's not pitching great. So I wanted to believe in Rodon coming into the season. I wanted to believe in a bounce back, but I don't know what the explanation specifically for the slider not being there. And that's the thing that, okay, if he was averaging 94 miles per hour, but his slider still looked like a big wipeout offering, then I could be a little more on board. But right now, I just don't see any reason to be.
I mean, you've offered the best explanation I've heard, where just introducing the cutter to his arsenal kind of ruined Rodon's feel for the slider, right? Like it blended the 2 pitches too much, I guess. Is that the idea?
That's the theory I've been operating under. And for what it's worth, kind of the same thing happened to Luis Severino a couple years ago, where he started tinkering with a cutter, and now it's a chicken and egg thing with both of those guys. Like, did they lose the slider and have to find other pitches? Because Rodon also threw his changeup and his curveball 13% of the time combined, which those have been very rarely used pitches for him. And he's expanding the arsenal here, I think, out of necessity, because he doesn't have the slider. But it's just, could he just ditch the cutter and get the slider back? That's what I don't know.
Yeah, I'm out on Carlos Rodon too. I think if you can get something for him that's better than droppable, hopefully quite a bit better than droppable. But the point is, I wouldn't have hesitated to drop Carlos Rodon in like a 12-team league prior to this start. And so if this start redeems his value, his trade value in any way, I agree you should take advantage.
The next question is just trying to figure out what can you get for Carlos Rodon, if anything, right? I mean, I think the very clear, obvious buy low pitcher right now is Blake Snell if you think he's going to get back on track. But
would absolutely do that.
is anybody going to give you Blake Snell for Rodon? My guess is probably
I
not,
mean,
right?
Rodon was being drafted lower than Blake Snell, certainly, but
By quite a bit.
he's got a 2.70 ERA right now. Like,
Yeah.
I
What
don't.
about Chris Bassett?
I would do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I seems possible.
What about two hitters, Nick Castellanos and Jordan Walker?
I have more faith in Nick Castellanos moving forward than I do Carlos Rodon. I will say that. I would hope to get more than Castellanos, given Rodon's good ERA and Castellanos' awful numbers, but I feel better about Castellanos moving forward.
Joe Musgrove.
Sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
for sure. Yep.
Yep.
I think all the names that we've mentioned, the hitters, the pitchers, I would try and make that happen for Carlos Rodon if I could. Player of the night for me, I'm trying to work in more hitters here. Not that there was like some massive hitter standout performance today, but Travis d'Arnaud stayed hot, 2 for 5 with his 5th home run. All 5 of his home runs have come in his past 4 games. He's batting .273, 14 RBI, and 980 OPS. He is just crushing the ball early on. 15% barrel rate entering Monday's action. He's still only 55% rostered. It's kind of a short-term situation because Sean Murphy will be back at some point. But I've been getting questions about struggling catchers in one-catcher leagues. Would you guys consider dropping like a Gabriel Moreno or a Bo Naylor in a one-catcher league to pick up Travis d'Arnaud?
Sure, in a one-catcher league, that seems fine. I'm actually putting together for Tuesday a do not drop list, and none of those players are on it. d'Arnaud himself is not on it, but neither is Bo Naylor or Gabriel Moreno. So among slow starting hitters, I don't think those two are like so established that you couldn't move on from them if you saw a hotter hand play or somebody else who was interesting you at the position. I will say that my biggest takeaway probably of Travis d'Arnaud's power surge is it's really bad news for people who invested in Sean Murphy, because the hope all along was that Murphy would claim a larger share of the workload there for the Braves, and I think this might completely ruin it.
Yep, I think that is fair as well. Let's quickly promote a few things. Download and follow FBT and FBT and 5 on Spotify. And if for the people watching us live, like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already, youtube.com/fantasybaseball today. Let's take our first break. When we return, we'll talk about Heston Kjerstad. He's getting the call from the Orioles, and we'll do that right after this. Welcome back in. The Orioles are recalling one of their top prospects, Heston Kjerstad, who is arguably, maybe not arguably, the best hitter in the minors right now. They did have some procedural things take place here on Monday. Austin Hayes was placed in the IL with calf tightness. Ryan Mountcastle was out of the lineup Monday due to knee soreness. And Kjerstad in the minors this season, a .349 batting average, 10 homers, 30 RBI in 21 games. This is just bonkers numbers that just that whole team is putting up. The Norfolk Tides?
Tide.
Yeah. The Tide. That AAA team has just been ridiculous. He's hitting the ball hard. Plate discipline looks pretty good. Heston Kjerstad is 25 years old. He could play first and corner outfield. He's 39% rostered. So, Scott, a good amount of people are already stashing Heston Kjerstad. The question becomes, is he going to play? Is he going to play enough to matter for fantasy?
Yeah. I mean, look, it could happen. Life could find a way. He could hit 2 home runs the first time he's put in the lineup and never sit again. But as things stand right now, I'm skeptical that's going to happen. He's on the roster because they had an opening to fill with Austin Hayes going on the IL with a calf injury. It doesn't sound like a long-term injury for Hayes. Nothing I've seen would suggest that anyway. And obviously he makes for a better fit. He's going to get a spot back whenever he's healthy. So at one point, Colton Cowser was the player who we were like, how's he going to find his way into the Orioles lineup? But he had already overtaken Hayes. So that option is off the table. The Hayes spot has already been filled by Colton Cowser. So now what's it going to take to open up a spot for Kjerstad? Ryan O'Hearn could fall off. Anthony Santander, he's been kind of a stable presence in the Orioles lineup, but I could see him slumping his way out of the lineup, but I don't think that's happening imminently, even if it does. And then for Kjerstad himself, he's DH only, at least in CBS leagues at the moment. So I think in most circumstances, it's a wait and see situation rather than a must-add situation with Heston Kjerstad. 5 outfielder leagues, obviously not a bad idea to add him, but I wouldn't consider it a must even there.
I think the wild card in all of this is Ryan Mountcastle, because again, he was out Monday with this knee injury. If this becomes something bigger, then I could see, all right, Kjerstad, just by necessity, they need a first baseman or a DH. He can earn more playing time that way. But again, based on everything we've heard, it doesn't sound like Mountcastle's going on the IL or anything. So wait and see approach. If you have a roster spot, obviously, again, Kjerstad's been maybe the best hitter in the minors this season. It wouldn't hurt to just pick him up and see where it goes from here, but not a must add yet. Let's see where it goes. News and notes: Bryce Harper and Manny Machado were both placed on the paternity list. They'll miss between 1 and 3 games moving forward this week. Ozzy Albies has begun swinging a bat and could return when first eligible on Friday. Pete Fairbanks was placed in the IL with a nerve-related issue, and everything I read was pretty vague on Fairbanks here. Chris, Jason Adam is the next man up, right? He's 22% rostered.
I think he clearly has to be, because there were two different stints on the IL for Pete Fairbanks last season, and Jason Adam got 10 out of 12 saves for the Rays. I didn't go through all the save opportunities, but he got 10 out of the 12 saves. So that was one change that they made last season, that when it was Fairbanks, it was Fairbanks. And when it wasn't Fairbanks, it was Adam. And obviously we can't say that it'll definitely continue to be that way this season, but yeah, I think if you need saves, Jason Adam is absolutely as high a priority add as Kirby Yates right now, if both are available.
Okay, so I was going to ask, would you take Jason Adam over any of Yoel Payamps or the Cubs options, Hector Neris, Mark Leiter?
I would add him over the Cubs guys, yeah, because I think it's more clear that it's going to be him for some amount of time than it is with, I think it's Hector Neris, but I would guess Alzolay has a chance to work his way back in. I feel pretty confident that's going to be Adam more often than not moving forward.
Would you take him over Payamps?
Yeah.
No, I think I prefer Payamps. Yeah.
But we do prefer Kirby Yates to all of them, right?
Yes. Now. Yes. But but if I guess when I said like as much of a priority as Yates is, maybe it was
when he added more. Okay. When Leclerc got removed. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. And Kirby Yates is the most added relief pitcher on CBS, and he is up to 70% rostered. So he still could be out there in some leagues. And I remain, regardless of format, head-to-head points, roto, head-to-head categories, doesn't matter. I think Kirby Yates needs to be closer to 100% rostered at this point. Paul Sewald will start a rehab assignment at AAA on Tuesday. He started the season on the IL with a grade 2 left oblique strain. Merrill Kelly was diagnosed with a teres major strain of his right shoulder and is on track to receive another MRI. It looks like he is headed for the IL as well. Yariel Rodriguez remains on a restricted workload this season and will likely shift to a multi-inning relief role once Alek Manoah is deemed ready to rejoin the rotation. When will that be? I'm not sure. It sounds like Manoah will make another rehab start later this week. But I understand Rodriguez hasn't thrown many innings. This kind of surprised me. Like, why not talk about doing this later on? He very clearly is a better option than Alek Manoah right now. IMO.
What level was that last year? It was.
Scott, are you here?
Is my connection messed up?
It was messing up for a second, but I think you're good now.
Okay. Sorry about that. I wish I could fix it. Alek Manoah, his last rehab start Friday was good in that he didn't walk anybody, which has been a big problem for him this whole time. And it was at AAA. Let's see. 7 swinging strikes on 92 pitches. That obviously isn't very good. I just wonder if the Blue Jays were reassured enough by that rehab start that they're like, okay, we definitely want to give Manoah another look. But overall, yeah, I mean, I'm disappointed because I picked up Yariel Rodriguez in several leagues. Excited about the strikeout potential there, and if Manoah's as bad as we think he is, Rodriguez might be back in the rotation soon enough.
Frankie Montas was placed on the IL with a bruised forearm. Nick Martinez will start Thursday against the Phillies. Shane Baz will soon throw 2 innings in an extended spring training game. Braxton Garrett threw a bullpen session Sunday. He was briefly shut down due to a bout with dead arm, but sounds like he could be working his way back soon. Jake Berger will be evaluated soon to determine whether he can begin hitting. He's on the IL with a left intercostal strain. Wade Miley was placed on the IL with left elbow inflammation. Louis Varland was optioned to AAA on Monday. It sounds like Simeon Woods Richardson could take his spot in the rotation. He made 1 start earlier this season. He allowed just 1 run over 6 innings, but despite being rated as a pretty good prospect, his minor league numbers are pretty bad. So
yeah, and it's been a few years since he's been really considered much of a prospect. So I don't know. We'll see, but I'm not particularly excited about him.
And Scott, this news item is for you, my friend. Jonathan Aranda is expected to begin a rehab assignment at AAA soon. He had the pins removed from his surgically repaired finger a week ago. And all of a sudden, I mean, that Rays lineup might be turning it around because it looks like Josh Lowe is almost, ready to return. He's doing rehab. Aranda's on his way back. So, hopefully.
Not good news for Junior Caminero, but
true.
If you missed out on Michael Busch, Jonathan Aranda is his American League counterpart, and he is rostered almost nowhere.
I remember
you put him in an IL spot.
You were making that comp dating back to last year too, so
it's
we'll see.
Yeah, a couple 26-year-olds kicking around at AAA with amazing exit velos and pit plate discipline. And just lacking an opportunity. But Aranda had a superb spring, and it seemed like the Rays were really excited about him before he fractured that finger. So I imagine they're going to be excited to get him back in the lineup. That doesn't mean they won't do the Rays thing where he's in and out of the lineup and sitting against some left-handers. But if he performs well enough, that could change quickly.
Yeah, only 12% rostered for Jonathan Aranda. So for those in deeper leagues, he's a name. Go check and see if he is available. Let's get back into Monday's action. Jared Jones continues to be must-see TV. Did you guys see that swing that he induced on Bryce Terang? That was ridiculous. Just awesome stuff. Jared Jones has been amazing. 6 innings, 1 run, 7 strikeouts with 25 swinging strikes on 91 pitches. 13 of those on the fastball, 11 on the slider, 1 on the changeup. He did give up some hard contact. I think that's going to be part of Jared Jones's game, but just gets so many whiffs. It might not matter all that much.
How did this guy, Jared Jones, have a 4.72 ERA in the minors last year?
His stuff.
I didn't even have him in my top 100 prospects. And
his stuff appears to have taken like a big step forward. He had good stuff before this, but because he was someone that I think was like a fringe top 100 prospect for the most part. And I saw Jared Seidler from Baseball Prospectus, who's one of their prospect guys, talking about it. And they didn't have Jared Jones. I think they didn't have him in their top 100 entering the season. Yeah. And he was like, he'd probably have to be top 15, top 20 right now, but how much higher would he have to be? And part of it is that he's made this big leap in terms of his stuff, and the slider is looking amazing. And the big question with Jared Jones is, it's been a month. How much of this command can stay? If most of it does, I mean, we've talked about it a ton, but he looks like Spencer Strider right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Spencer Strider, somewhat famously, I left him out of my top 100 prior to his rookie season, but I always felt like I knew better. Like I should have not done that. I had Spencer Strider. I picked up in all my dynasty leagues, and I bought into the narrative that the reliever risk was too strong, so I left him out of my top 100. But Jared Jones, he was in consideration. It's not like I didn't know who he was, but it in the end, it was pretty easy. Like I was considering Bubba Chandler among Pirates pitching prospects over Jared Jones, and now he looks like a total ace. And Bryce Terang falling down on that swing. What gets me about it is you look at the path his bat was taking, and it was nowhere near where the ball, like it's easy to fixate on him falling as he swung, but just like he was so totally fooled by that pitch, more than maybe I've ever seen a major leaguer fooled by it. And that's Bryce Terang, who has pretty good contact skills. So that was a good one.
He's throwing even harder in this outing. Velocity was up almost a mile per hour for Jared Jones. Given everything we've seen so far with injuries this season, you don't need to do that. You could probably be really good at 96, but yeah, I think as long as Jared Jones is healthy, based on what we've seen so far, I don't see any reason to think there are going to be more than 15 better pitchers on a per inning basis. And it's just a question of whether he can stay healthy and how many innings he's going to throw. But it's unbelievable how good he is right now.
Some awesome stats here that I saw on Twitter earlier regarding Jared Jones. Per Sarah Lang's, Jared Jones's 98 swings and misses this season are the most by a pitcher in his first 5 career starts in the pitch tracking era. So that's dating back to 2008. And per the MLB account on Twitter, Jared Jones is the 4th pitcher since 1893 to strike out at least 7 batters in each of his first 5 career games. The final question on Jared Jones: how high does he move up in the rankings this week?
Let's see. I got him up to 26 last time. I'll probably go ahead and move him ahead of Jesus Luzardo and Blake Snell now.
So top 25.
Yeah, top 25. Probably not top 20. And yeah, the biggest concern, like Chris was saying, is just he's a rookie, and he had that one start where he threw 50 something pitches, right? So the Pirates are being cognizant of his workload already here in April. But if that wasn't a question, then he would be top 20, I would say.
Yep.
Would you give up Jared Jones to get Max Fried right now?
No, I don't think so. I'm pretty worried about Fried.
Would you give up Jared Jones to get Dylan Cease right now?
Yeah, I'd do that.
I think so, but I don't think you could realistically pull that off. I could be wrong.
Jared Jones or Chris Sale?
Chris Sale. And I
really close because Sale has so much injury risk himself. That's a wash. I don't think I would. Like if I had either one of those pitchers, I don't think I would swap them for the other one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I don't know how to respond to. I don't know what to do with Max Fried because I just kind of have this vague feeling he's not healthy. But
who's that?
Max Fried.
Yeah.
Am I cutting out again?
No, you're here.
About to trash everything. I just have this vague feeling Max Fried isn't healthy.
Yeah.
But
there's no way for us to know that.
Right. And so I don't know how much I want to act on it. I certainly don't know how much I want that to impact my ranking of him, because for most any other established star who's struggling right now, I'm saying just relax. It's probably going to be fine. And I guess it's more likely to be fine than not for Fried too, but I've just got this nagging feeling that it won't be, and I'm not really sure how to apply that.
Francisco Lindor didn't have a forearm strain last year,
Yeah, that's one thing, yeah.
That's the biggest thing for me. Is just like I think I was probably too laissez-faire about that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Again, that is Jared Jones that we're talking about. We'll have the rankings updates coming up later in the week. Do any of these pitchers matter for fantasy? They all had some pretty interesting performances here on Monday. Keaton Winn has turned in back-to-back quality starts. This one was against the Mets, 6 innings, 1 run allowed, 6 strikeouts. He is an interesting pitcher in that he throws hard, but his splitter is also his most used pitch. And entering this start, he had a 113 stuff plus, so that's a pretty damn good mark. Gets a lot of ground balls, too. He's 37% rostered. Does Keaton Winn matter for fantasy?
More than stream. I feel like it's happening again, isn't it? My gosh. In the last year, I've gotten a new computer. I've gotten a new modem. You're not even hearing what I'm saying, are you?
We're hearing you.
No, we're hearing you. Your video is kind of lagging, but
upgraded the internet. Done everything I can think to do. It doesn't matter.
The internet's your computer's too fast for the tubes that are feeding it. But I'll take this one. I think Keaton Winn is probably mostly just a streamer type against good matchups. We saw a very good start against the Marlins last week. The Mets are honestly a pretty good matchup right now as well. I don't think there's a ton of upside, certainly not on the strikeout front, but he's showing the ability to suppress hard contact decently well, so he'll be useful against the right matchups, but I can't say I'm too excited.
What about JP Sears? He was great in a revenge game at the Yankees, 6 shutout innings with 7 strikeouts. He had 14 swinging strikes on 91 pitches, and through, I believe it's now 4 or 5 starts, he's got a 3.38 ERA, a 105 whip. He's 25% rostered. Does JP Sears matter for fantasy?
Probably not, but I could see him being a streamer type as an extreme fly ball pitcher who can occasionally put up a good strikeout numbers. He has a 540 xFIP. I think part of that is just the fly ball rate is so high, but we're not normally touting pitchers with a 540 xFIP.
The one thing I did notice with him was he had a 13% whiff rate with his sweeper coming into this start. Yeah. And he got 6 whiffs with it today. So, this is kind of a new approach for him. He's going sweeper first. I think he added that pitch last season. So it might be something where he's still figuring out the best way to use it, especially when using it as more of a primary pitch. So maybe we're seeing some signs of growth. The strikeouts have been up over the past 3 starts that have been much better. So I mostly agree that he's just a streamer against the right matchups, probably in the right park. So this was a bad park for a fly ball pitcher and it worked out. So, I mostly agree with that, I think.
The final line for Joe Ross was just okay. 5 1/3 innings, 2 runs, 4 strikeouts to 1 walk, but he had 17 swinging strikes on 79 pitches. That is a 21.5% swinging strike rate. Does this matter? Does this performance matter at all from Joe Ross?
I think it matters even less than the first 2 guys we talked about.
All right, so let's slide over to Bryce Elder, who turned in a quality start in his season debut against the Marlins. It was 6 2/3 shutout, 8 hits allowed, 4 strikeouts with 11 swinging strikes. He did give up 10 hard hits in this game. Pretty similar pitch mix to what I compared to last year. He's 30% rostered. Scott, does this matter? Bryce Elder?
I mean, it matters because it's going to give him another turn, at least. I would like to see him do something like this against a lineup better than the Marlins. He only threw 64% of his pitches for strikes in this one. He threw 62% of them for strikes in the minors, and I don't think his arsenal is nearly good enough to get away with that. And I'm not particularly eager to pick up Bryce Elder right now, though he will have the Braves offense backing him. He can take on a pretty big workload. I'm not ruling out him mattering, but I don't think he matters yet.
Yeah, I kind of view him and the next guy we're going to talk about very similar, and it's Albert Suarez, where it's just maybe for Suarez, it's probably even, I think, matters more because of the park that he plays in, which is a better park than the Braves play in. But yeah, the appeal is mostly any halfway decent pitcher can be pretty good when they've got the Braves and Orioles backing them up. Dean Kramer won 13 games for the Orioles last season. That's mostly, I think, the appeal of Elder and Suarez. I would add Suarez ahead of Elder. And I think I would add Suarez ahead of Wynn, Sears, Ross, all the other guys we've talked about as well. But I don't think he's a very good pitcher in his own right. It's mostly the circumstances, but the circumstances are really, really good.
It's an interesting story for Suarez, too, because he's 34 years old. He last pitched in Major League Baseball for the Giants back in 2017. He spent the past 2 years in the KBO, where he was mostly a ground ball specialist. And early on here, I mean, it's not like he had a crazy amount of strikeouts in his first start, but he did have 16 swinging strikes on 89 pitches in this outing, and he's 7% rostered. So widely available. I think I agree that even if we include Chris Paddack in this group, I think Albert Suarez is probably the most interesting one that we've mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, these are all guys where something besides their talent level needs to make them valuable if they are going to be valuable. In Paddack's case, RP eligibility and head-to-head points league is the primary thing. In Suarez and Elder's case, to a lesser extent, it's the teams they pitch for.
All right, this last one is Ryan Weathers, who didn't necessarily have a great or even interesting start, but I thought it was worth highlighting because he was coming off a 10 strikeout start his last time out, and he completely kind of changed his pitch mix in this start as well. He made the changeup his most used pitch. He threw more sinkers as well, and the last time out in that 10 strikeout start, the sweeper was his most used pitch, and he only used it 13% in this start. So, Ryan Weathers has a 3.16 ERA, but it's also a 140 whip, and it's, a 4.49 xFIP. He's up to 43% rostered. I don't know.
He's had one start worth caring about,
Right.
I don't think we need to go much deeper than that. It's there was some optimism surrounding him coming out of spring training, and coming off that 10 strikeout effort. It was reason to take a second look, but then when he bounces back with this one strikeout effort, I just don't think there's too much to dig into here for Ryan Weathers.
Okay.
All right. Let's take our final break. When we return, we'll talk about some hitters who are off to slow starts and a few names who have slowed down after hot starts. We'll do that right after this.
One last shot to seal their fate. Who will earn the chance to be champions? It's the Coppa Italia semi-finals on CBS Sports Network and streaming live on Paramount+.
Welcome back in. I know typically for early round hitters, we wait until May, the end of May, Memorial Day, around that time to maybe start making some declarations. But Aaron Judge is off to a pretty rough start. 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts on Monday. He's batting 174 with a 645 OPS. He's got a 30% strikeout rate early on. Some just kind of weird stuff going on with the batted ball data. Lots of infield fly balls so far. The expected stats look really, really bad. I can't tell if this is just me being a kind of overly concerned / pessimistic Yankee fan, but I have a bit of like a Max Fried feeling with Aaron Judge where he was not healthy in spring training, and I just wonder, is he healthy right now? And I don't know.
But he wasn't hurt in spring training, right?
Well, he missed a week with like a...
Oh, the side soreness. Yeah.
I think it was like a rib or like...
Yeah. Maybe that's limiting him. The thing I try to look for when I'm looking at established players like this, and my general baseline assumption is just I'm not going to be worried about it. But the first thing I want to look at is their current level of struggle an outlier? Like, is this something that we have not seen from them before? In Judge's case, no. This is a fairly standard Aaron Judge slump, something that he's done right around once per season, at least every year in the majors. And actually he had 2. So what I'm referring to is he has a 294 WOBA through his first 22 games this season. Last season, he had a 22-game stretch where he had a 316 WOBA. He had another one with a 324. In 2022, MVP season, 63 home runs, American League home run record.
62.
62, whatever. 297 WOBA over a 22-game stretch beginning in about mid-June. He does this about once or twice every year. No, I'm not concerned.
All right, well, let's move on to the next hitter. Zach Geloff went 1 for 4 with his third home run, but it has been a struggle for him. He's batting .205. The power and speed has been okay. 3 homers, 4 steals, but it's a .623 OPS, 31% strikeout rate, and some of the underlying plate discipline things that we were worried about coming into the season are there to start as well. The zone contact is not good. The swinging strike rate is quite bad as well. Scott, I know you're writing the article. Should you hold on to this player or not? What do you think about Zach Geloff? He's 86% rostered. All those strikeouts, they matter a lot in a points league.
Yeah, he's not on my do not drop list for points leagues.
Mhm.
He is for roto leagues. And just because he's not for points leagues doesn't mean you should absolutely drop Zach Geloff. Obviously, he's not nearly as proven as Aaron Judge, so it's kind of unfair to have Geloff follow Judge there, because there are reasons why Geloff may not work out. And you already talked about him. The plate discipline issues, too many strikeouts, low zone contact rate, even the power he generates. It wasn't so much to his pull side. And does he have the exit velocities to pull that off? Those were all questions we were asking as he was crushing it down the stretch last season. And so maybe it's come home to roost. But I think it's too early to say for sure. You know, that's going to be something I'll say for all these hitters. You know, I'll go ahead and do this now if you don't mind. So in that same article, my do not drop list article, I talked about what some hitters were batting at the end of April last year. So we're not even to the end of April. We got another week to go this year. But at the end of April last year, Bobby Witt was batting .222 with the .659 OPS. Mookie Betts, .235. He was batting Juan Soto, .202. Francisco Lindor, .218.
I did a similar exercise for a piece going up tomorrow.
Oh, great.
Do you remember who? It's a different type of piece. Don't worry.
Okay.
But do you remember who the best hitter in baseball was last season per WOBA?
Last season or last April?
Last April.
I think I do know from doing this research that it was Matt Chapman.
Matt Chapman had a 481 WOBA. He led baseball with a 33% barrel rate. He had the highest average exit velocity in baseball. He had the highest hard hit rate in baseball. Also, Josh Naylor, Spencer Torkelson, and Tristan Casas were all like bottom 10.
Yeah.
WOBA.
Yeah, I was getting to them too. Torkelson hit 206. Casas hit 133.
Yep.
Bregman hit 219. Oh, and the most famous case of all, I didn't even include him here. I think Marcelo Zuna batted under
he was
100.
awful.
Under 100.
He was dropped in my NL only labor league last year in early May.
Yeah.
And those are just some examples. Obviously, it's not the full list. Again, with an extra week of sample added on to what we already have here, which is to say that nothing that's happened so far means anything yet.
I'm going to have a piece tomorrow. Just what does April matter? And to a certain extent, yes, it does. Obviously, those points that you get in your standings, those all count. But I asked on Twitter whether people thought that April statistics or June statistics, to pick one random month from the middle of the season, were more predictive. And like 88% of people picked June. And you guys are all lying. Because if you really don't think April is predictive, then why are you all freaking out so much? I know why you're freaking out. But still.
Would either month be more predictive? Like
June is actually slightly more predictive, but neither is all that predictive.
Yeah.
One might say that full season statistics are more predictive.
One might say that.
All right, well, should I just skip the rest of the segment then? Because
No,
I
that's
feel
okay.
like
That's okay.
No, because like Zach Geloff is, I think, an interesting a case worth highlighting because like in a points league, yeah, I think you can absolutely drop him. I think he was a fringe top 12 guy coming into the season.
And that's important context, because saying you can drop him in a points league, okay, shallow league, not his ideal format, more robust waiver wire, so the quality of player you'd be picking up by dropping him is higher. And so that's why you can justify it in that format versus Roto. But it doesn't mean, like, the reason I can't sanction dropping Geloff in Roto is because he could still be good. And obviously if he's still good, he'll be good in points leagues too. So it's there are a lot of other factors coming into play than just a strict evaluation of Geloff.
What about Bryson Stott then in a points league as well? Because he went 0 for 2 with a walk here on Monday. He's batting .217 with a .566 OPS. His quality of contact, not that it's ever been amazing, but it's especially bad so far. 83.8 average exit velocity. Oddly enough, he's actually hitting well against lefties, but doing very poorly against righties. Thoughts on Bryson Stott?
He can't have many at-bats against lefties, right? Because he's sat most of the time, and that's my biggest concern for Stott. He is on my do not drop list for Roto, but he is not on my do not drop list for points.
Agreed with that. Yeah, I think he's fringy in points for sure.
We are very clearly not dropping O'Neal Cruz, but he is striking out 38.5% of the time. He's batting .233 with a .637 OPS. He was actually recently dropped down in the Pirates lineup where he batted 8th on both Saturday and Sunday. He hit 7th here on Monday. Still hitting the ball hard. Oddly enough, lots of ground balls, lots of pop-ups. It might just be this guy didn't play all of last season and he's rusty kind of thing.
Well, it might be, but for over a year now, we've clung to this hope that maybe he's figured out how not to strike out so much, because he struck out less than 30% of the time 2 Septembers ago. And then last spring, his strikeout rate was like 25%, and it was like 22% in the 9 games he played before getting hurt. And it was kind of low this past spring too. So maybe he's figured it out. And so then we get 3.5 weeks of him striking out nearly 40% of the time. And that's a bigger, more it's a small sample, but it's a bigger, more meaningful sample than any of those others we were clinging to. And so that's kind of diminished that hope for me. And I actually did move O'Neal Cruz behind CJ Abrams and Bo Bichette in my last rest of season rankings update. Again, we're not dropping him, and he could still be a very valuable fantasy asset, even with a high strikeout rate, but I don't think he's going to be a super stud.
You mentioned Bo Bichette there, and the top 3 in the Blue Jays lineup are all off to slow starts: George Springer, Vladimir Guerrero, and Bo Bichette. Chris, is there anything here that's worrisome, or would you be looking to buy low on all 3 of those names? What do you think?
So I think the Guerrero one is interesting because last season he dramatically underperformed his expected WOBA. His expected WOBA was 378. His actual WOBA was 340. And that was really the first time that had happened for him. Vladimir Guerrero, for what I think are fairly obvious reasons, he has a fairly all fields approach. So there's not really like any specific way you would expect him to under or overperform his expected metrics. He had been within 5 points, five thousandths of a point in his expected WOBA versus WOBA every year prior last year. And now suddenly he's 41 points behind after being 38 behind last year. So I'm not sure if there's anything in his profile that has changed to make him more likely to underperform, but the fact that it happened last year and it's happening this year does make me wonder. I still think better days are ahead for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. The quality of contact for the most part remains outstanding. Launch angle is down slightly from 2023, but it's still the 3rd highest of his career. So he's not necessarily hitting an alarming amount of ground balls, or at least he's not trading fly balls in a way that I think is too concerning. So I feel mostly pretty confident about him. I don't have too many concerns about Bo Bichette either. Springer is just, he's old enough that the end might be here of him as a difference maker. And so, yeah, I'm more concerned about him than the other two for sure.
Two Cardinals hitters who desperately need to get going. Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Gorman both hit home runs here on Monday. People are already dropping Gorman. And look, at a points league, I can't blame you. He's striking out a lot. He is down to 68% rostered. Scott, anything to add on Goldie and Gorman?
Well, I have Gorman on my do not drop list for Roto, but not for points. So that probably jibes with what people are doing. Goldschmidt, I have on my do not drop list for both because he's Paul Goldschmidt and has been a stud for longer than most people listening have been playing fantasy baseball. But I did have him as a bust coming into the year, and he is at that age where he could begin to slow down. And those signs I saw in the second half of, the exit velocity being down, the strikeouts being up, they're all there. And yet it could just be a slow start. So you have to give him more time, I think, even though there are warning signs.
Bonus, two hitters who have slowed down after a hot start. Anthony Volpe, in 11 games since being moved to the leadoff spot, is batting .205 with 1 double, 0 homers. Plate discipline is still good. He's hitting lots of ground balls during that time. And Maikel Garcia, who actually hit a home run here on Monday. His previous 14 games before this one, he was batting .125 with 0 homers. Plate discipline is still fine. Hitting the ball hard, but it's a .156 BABIP, so potentially unlucky there. Chris, did we maybe jump the gun at all with Volpe or Maikel Garcia?
I mean, Volpe, the one thing you can do on Baseball Savant is they have a little like rolling 50, 100, or 250s ex WOBA. And so I put his at 50 plate appearances because he was I think he's at 96 now for the season. So basically split the season right in half. And through his first 50 plate appearances, he was right at like a 395 expected WOBA, as high as it's ever been for him. Last 50 plate appearances, 297 expected WOBA, just about as low as it's ever been. So, I think there could be a bit of a fooled you. I don't know if we have that drop, if you were aware of that drop, but that's an old Adam Azer one.
He still plays it on the football.
I think there's definitely some. Yeah, I think so. I think there's definitely some concern that would be the case, and I wasn't quite wholly buying into Anthony Volpe taking this huge step forward anyway. So I'm inclined to think that there was a little bit of fool's gold going on early on.
I'm still strong on Volpe. I've moved him up to 11th in my shortstop rankings last week, and I'm not inclined to change it. He steals so many bases. His plate discipline is so good. Is he still batting leadoff for the Yankees?
Yeah.
Or did he drop out? Yeah.
Nicer.
Obviously he couldn't sustain what he was doing before. I think it's general, and I'm not saying you're doing this, Chris, but I think it's generally bad process to raise and lower a guy in your rest of season rankings based on the direction he's streaking at that moment.
I never raised him higher than 15th at shortstop.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I said
I would still take Volpe over Ha-Sung Kim and Nico Horner and Xander Bogaerts, and those guys I moved him ahead of.
Yeah, I'd take all those guys ahead of him still. But Nico Horner might be the comp now. Like where you're hoping he hits 280 and scores a bunch of runs, steals a bunch.
Except Volpe's actually stealing a lot of bases, not actually and Nico Horner's stealing none.
Mm-hmm. Let's run through some waiver wire hitters. Dalton Varsho stayed hot, 1 for 3 with his 6th home run, and he's got 15 runs scored, 13 RBI, 2 steals, and 881 OPS. He is up to 71% roster. Does that sound right for Dalton Varsho, who's pretty hot right now?
It might be high.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like it might be fine to ride him out there as a hot hand play in a head-to-head points league, but I think it's very unlikely that he's going to matter for head-to-head points moving forward. So there are not 71% of CBS fantasy leagues that are categories. So he's probably in the long run too highly rostered, but I think it's fine for now. He just is someone that will be pretty easy to drop in a head-to-head points league when he cools down.
Edouard Julien had himself a big game, 3 for 4 with his 5th home run, added 2 runs and 2 RBI. He remains an enigma for me. I cannot figure this guy out at all. The expected stats are really bad. That comes with an amazing barrel rate entering Monday. It was 14.6%. He's 59% rostered. I think that's probably right. Maybe it's a little bit high. I don't know what to do with Edouard Julien.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think you pretty much summed it up. He's probably better than his data because he's just so unconventional, but he's still not that impactful. His strikeout rate diminishes some of that on base ability for points leagues, and he's probably not going to hit for a high enough batting average with enough stolen bases to be a big deal in roto leagues. He's probably just kind of a okay to subpar middle infield option.
Did you guys see the home run he hit today?
No.
I'm going to guess it was to the opposite field.
He actually hit it to the pull side.
All right.
Because
Good for
this
him.
thing was like 5 inches in and 5 inches up. It was one of the weirdest home runs I've seen, which is fitting for one of the weirdest players in baseball, Edouard Julien. It was wild. It was like around his elbows. I don't know how he got this thing out.
3 names that could matter in 5 outfielder leagues. Max Kepler is back from the IL. He went 2 for 4 with a double and 3 RBI. Jock Peterson is off to a solid start with the D-backs. He went 2 for 3. He's batting .326. Only has 2 home runs so far, but hitting the ball hard. And Mark Canha off to a solid start with the Tigers. 3 for 4 with his 4th home run. Only batting .247, but that comes with a .396 on base percentage. Do any of those names matter in 5 outfielder leagues? Canha, Jock Peterson, Max Kepler.
Sure. They matter in 5 outfielder leagues. I don't think any of them is a difference maker in 5 outfielder leagues. And, you know, if you didn't have an obvious need in your starting lineup, I'd just as soon pick up Heston Kjerstad and try for the upside there. But yeah, a lot of outfielders need to be started in 5 outfielder leagues, and I would be surprised if someone in your league couldn't use one of these guys, Kepler, Jock Peterson, and Canha.
I like Kepler and Canha more than Peterson, just for what it's worth. I love a K sound, you know?
Yeah, Jock is not going to play against lefties either. He is a strict platoon bat, but, you know, against righties so far, he has been really good this season. Again, that's Jock Peterson. Let's get into the leftovers. 2 mid-career lefties who look like breakouts / re-breakouts. Ranger Suarez continues his great start. He was at the Reds, 7 shutout innings with 5 strikeouts, 14 swinging strikes on 88 pitches. He is back to getting tons of ground balls this season. The control has been great. 1.4 walks per 9. For his career, that's been 3.1 walks per 9. So I wonder about whether or not he can keep that up. And the other name is Yusei Kikuchi, who just continues to get it done. It's now 3 straight quality starts, 6 innings, 2 runs, 4 strikeouts for him, 12 swinging strikes on 81 pitches. Worth mentioning, he gave up a lot of hard contact in this start, but he was doing a much better job of that in his first 3 or 4 outings. Anything to add on Ranger Suarez and Yusei Kikuchi?
Well, the last time we saw Ranger Suarez's control anywhere near this good, and to be honest, it wasn't exactly near this good. It's just the best we had seen of him control-wise prior to this year was 2021 when he had a 1.36 ERA. A lot of that coming in relief, granted, but that was the year where over the final 2 months he entered the rotation at a 1.51 ERA. So he was doing very similar things to what he's doing now. It's always been a great ground ball pitcher. I think there's got to be some regression coming with that, obviously with the ERA, but with the control as well. But I'm not so inclined to say it's totally phony and Ranger Suarez is somebody you're going to be dropping at some point. There's an element of sell high there for sure, but you'd have to get a pretty good player in return.
And I just have a hard time seeing anybody really buying Ranger Suarez for like, would you give up Ranger Suarez for Carlos Rodon?
No.
Nah.
Like, I think I'd rather have Rodon, but I'm not sure I'd actively be seeking that trade out.
No, I'd trade Rodon for Suarez. Like I said
Interesting.
earlier, I'd trade Rodon for anyone who wouldn't be an obvious drop for me, and Suarez certainly wouldn't.
Mm-hmm. Some other pitching leftovers. Dylan Cease was masterful in Coors Field. 7 innings, 1 hit, 1 run, 0 walks to 8 strikeouts. Tarek Skubal dominant at the Rays. 6 shutout innings with 9 strikeouts to 0 walks. Brandon Pfaadt was solid at the Cardinals. 5 1/3 innings, 2 runs, 4 strikeouts. And Reed Detmers, he's looked a little more human in the past 2 starts. I realize I might be holding him to a much higher standard now than we did entering the season, just because he got off to a great start. But it was 7 innings, 4 runs, 3 walks to 4 strikeouts for Reed Detmers. Chris, anything to add on him, Pfaadt, Skubal, and Cease?
There have been some signs that Dylan Cease was adding a cutter, and it wasn't clear if like the pitch tracking was wonky or if it was just an especially hard slider, but it does seem as if he was throwing a cutter today. Baseball Savant has him throwing 7 of them at 91.3 miles per hour. His hardest slider was 89.4, so it seems like a distinct pitch. That is a potentially interesting addition for him, as long as, it doesn't mess up the slider. It didn't today. 10 whiffs on 34 pitches. Very, very good results from it. So that's something to keep an eye on with Dylan Cease. I know I'll just shout out Nick Pollock for the second podcast in a row. I know that's something he's been like screaming for Dylan Cease to add to his arsenal for a long time now. So interesting to see that, and it's definitely something to keep an eye on. But yeah, Dylan Cease, the right-handed Blake Snell, we're getting the good stretch right now.
Yes, that's
we all.
Certainly are. Some hitting leftovers. Michael Harris was off and running here, 2 for 4 with 2 steals, and he's off to an okay start. 307 batting average, 3 homers, 4 steals, and 810 OPS. Pete Alonso, 2 for 4 with his 7th homer. Starling Marte off to a great start. He went 2 for 4 with his 6th stolen base. He's batting .286. Also has 4 home runs. Michael Conforto in a revenge game against the Mets, 2 for 4 with his 5th home run. He's got 16 RBI early on. And Colton Cowser, 1 for 4 with his 6th homer. This one came off of Reed Detmers. It's a small sample size, but Cowser is now 4 for 14 with 2 home runs against left-handed pitching this season. Anything to add on those names?
I don't think Michael Conforto is any different from the guy we've seen the past couple years. And I was saying that at the start, where he hit those 3 quick homers early in the year, and he'd kind of cooled off since then. I don't know if this is another opportunity to sell on Michael Conforto, because I imagine he still ranks pretty high among outfielders year-to-date stats. But I don't see him sustaining this pace. I think he's the same guy.
Bullpen updates for the Oakland A's. Mason Miller is so fun to watch. It's just every time I bring up,
I'm cackling like a madman every time I watch him. I'm having so much fun.
Every time he pitches, it's just, how can you not be blown away? How could the hitters not be blown away?
That up and fastball that he threw to Aaron Judge was like the ugliest swing of Aaron Judge's career. He's so good.
Mason Miller got the 9th with a 2-run lead. He struck out the side facing the top of the Yankees lineup. Volpe, Soto, and Judge.
7 whiffs on I think 6 whiffs on 7 swings against his fastball. It's just absurd.
Nasty stuff. For the Pirates, David Bednar got the 9th with a 2-run lead. He gave up a hit, but picked up his 3rd save. That's back-to-back scoreless outings for him. Baby steps. Hopefully we're getting Bednar back on track. For the Braves, Raisel Iglesias struck out 1 for his 7th save. For the Blue Jays, Jordan Romano got the 9th with a 3-run lead. He allowed a solo homer, but converted his 3rd save. For the Padres, Robert Suarez allowed 2 hits, but picked up his 8th save and is tied for the league lead. And then for the Orioles, Craig Kimbrell entered the 9th with a 2-run lead. He gave up a hit and a walk, but he locked down his 6th save of the season. To stream or not to stream on Tuesday. And
it's like, I'm kind of interested in Andrew Epp. No, versus Philadelphia. Well, Paul Blackburn's been good. No, he's at Yankees. Well, Trevor Rogers has been kind of at Atlanta. Like, don't like these options, guys. Not a fan.
I've got the one. You ready?
Uh-oh.
Dane Dunning against the Mariners.
I think so. I think it's Dunning and or Fetty at the
Eric Fetty at the
Fetty's-
Twins could go okay, though I'm certainly not in on Fetty anymore as a general principle.
Like Scott talked about earlier in the pod, you should care more about the quality of the pitcher than the quality of the opponent. But if you don't, there's Eric Fetty against the Twins.
That's exactly right. How about on Wednesday? I could see Sean Manaea at the Giants being okay.
Turnbull at the Reds. It's a tough spot, but like
Yeah.
that's not a great lineup right now. They haven't been playing. Like Ellie De La Cruz is carrying that team to a large extent. So I could see that one being okay. Clark Schmidt against the Athletics.
John Gray against the Mariners could work.
Honestly, man, I mean, what's going on with the Astros?
Yeah.
Like,
No,
I don't think Jameson Taillon versus the Astros is a good start, but they've been dreadful.
I think John Gray against the Mariners is the best one. Though we didn't talk about it. He made a relief appearance over the weekend, which was kind of weird. And I wondered if that would push back the start, but apparently not. He's been great his last couple starts. He was great in that relief appearance. The sliders looked really good lately, and the Mariners are a good matchup. So I think that's a solid play.
All right, let's wrap up for the first time this year. Team Name Tuesday. If you have some fun team names you want to send in, you can do that at fantasybaseball@cbsi.com. That's the letter I. That's the email address you can send it to. This one's from Jake. Budo, Rooker everywhere. From Simon, Choreos with a gallon of milk.
That's
Sure.
actually a decent use of two names in one team name. I usually don't like that, but it works.
Bet's not Bogart's my Burger King.
Sure,
Too
I
many
assume
names.
that's a reference to something.
I might not be saying it right.
This is where you cram in too many names and nobody knows what the heck you're talking about.
From Colin, Smelly de la Shoes. This one's from Craig. Rodon a steer.
Yeah.
From Dave. Sayat like you Eflin means it.
Yeah.
From
Too
Matt.
many names. Don't like it.
Reagan's against the machine.
So I think it works better as Reagan's the Machine. That doesn't really work that well, though.
What if you do Ray against the machine?
Yeah, I think like that. Ray against the Machine, I think, is probably the better way to do it.
Just add a T to his name. Yeah.
Yeah. And this one's from Aaron Cowser's Castle.
See, you got to spoonerize this one. Cowser's Basil, if you're going to do this one, is the better way to go, I think.
Did you guys see that sign in the Orioles game over the weekend?
The cow.
It was a cow with Bowser's face on it. It was
Love that.
Is it Bowers Castle or does it Bowers Keep? I thought it was Bowser's Keep. What's the difference between a keep and a castle?
I would not question any kind of old video game reference when it comes to you, Scott. So
I think in Mario RPG it was Bowser's Keep.
Also known as Castle Koopa, is the capital of Koopa's kingdom, Bowser's capital, and is a recurring location in the Mario franchise. It first appears in Super Mario Bros. So,
All right.
There you go.
I see the point.
and
that's just based on mario.fandom.com. So who knows how reliable that source is.
A keep is the strongest or central tower of a castle. So did he only lose the keep of the castle to Smithy in Super Mario RPG?
It is called Bowser's Keep in Super Mario RPG.
There you go.
We got to the bottom of it.
There you go. That's my Mario reference.
And
That game.
are going to wrap there. For Scott and Chris, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning into Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. And we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.